Welcome to episode 2 of Portal PT Talks, where we talk all things fitness, rehab, and self-development. I'm your host, Kyle Waugh. On today's show, we have our special guest, Jake Dunn. He's a strength and movement specialist, physical therapist assistant, and personal trainer based out of Dallas, Texas. He specializes in online training, posture optimization, and pain management. This guy hustles and is a leader in the industry. We'll cover why posture isn't what you really thought it was, shoulders back, sit up tall, how to really change it, and some exercises to try out. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the show, Portal PT Talks. We have Jake here. Kind of want to talk about today just some posture, what is good posture, kind of 3 exercises that might be able to help out what you're doing, what you're trying to go after, and kind of what's missing from posture training, and the whole shebang with it. So just to start it off, Jake, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us kind of your qualifications, what you do, and what's your story, man?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for having me on here. My name is Jake Dunn. I'm a personal trainer and PTA. I've done a little bit of both, training for like 8 years, and then went to therapy school after that. Was in Florida for a long time, moved to New York City last year, and built my clientele there, which was great. And as of recently, as in this past week, it's awesome. It's a big change for me. So I actually just transitioned right now. I'm moving to Texas. Going to be down here working with a lot of golf athletes, which is going to be awesome. And of course, anyone else, but run an online business as well. So I do a lot of online coaching, rehab, training, doesn't really matter. I love bridging the gap, period, because I think that needs to be done in a effective manner. And I'm just here doing this now. So thank you for having me on here, and that's it.
Yeah, man. I like that bridging the gap. When I started out like training, I worked at this place called Body Structure Medical Fitness Facility, and it was half PT, half personal training in the same facility. And that was like where I first like realized like, oh my gosh, this is the same stuff. Like we should be doing this all together, getting people just stronger in general. But I think posture is definitely a factor, because even when I worked in that setting, is both sides were trying to fix this posture and telling our patients or clients what is good posture. And I think as I've gone through this process and learned a lot more, it's, there is good posture, there's pretty posture, but like it's way more, there's more to it, I would say. And I think you are the perfect person to elaborate on that with all of your experience. What would you say? I'm interested to hear what your opinion is on posture and what is good posture.
Well, thank you for the hardest question in the world. That's a broad term. It really just depends what you're trying to achieve. I think you can think of posture in many different ways. Of course, from regular standing posture to how you sit to how maybe your body should be conforming, right? But I think the best posture would be to be able to manipulate your body in and out of certain positions in an effective manner, right? Being able to own movement, whether you're in sitting, I know how to get from point A to point B, right? Instead of getting stuck somewhere when you're sitting. And then you have to call on other muscles potentially to help complete that movement for you, which might not be effective, but the body's going to get it done because it loves to get things done, because it's its job to keep us alive and keep us moving, right. Which is why I love respiration so much, because it affects everything. It affects your posture, the way we move, your joint position is everything. And then, that's a broad term. I love that though. It's really difficult, and once it gets put in a category, thinking, say it's neutrality or, slouching, all these other words come about, and they're just different terms to describe where you're at and what position you're in. And I just really want to bring a massive amount of awareness to people. That's my biggest thing. Of course I want to bring value, but to me, bringing an enormous amount of self-awareness to my clients, whether it's in person or online, is my value. It's everything, because once they understand how to move, how to own positions in any aspect, whether it's sport or at work, they're so much better. They stop worrying about certain things, and then I'm sure their posture gets better. They
Right.
feel better. Man, their pain might disappear. They might get stronger. All these things can come about from it. But yeah, posture is just, for me, it's just trying to own movement. It's trying to be able to manipulate your body. So when you're in a bad spot, like you're about to sprain your ankle, and roll on the outside of your foot, you're able to pronate your foot in so you don't sprain your ankle. You're
Right.
able to, but if you're not able to, you're rolling right out on the outside of your foot, and it's called an ankle sprain.
Yeah.
All these things that, it's just having a plan B. And that's my idea of posture.
Gotcha. So you're saying it's more, so like when I sit here and I pull my shoulders back and I sit up nice and tall and I look like, puff out my chest a little bit, I look pretty. There should be like a bunch of those built out almost. Like I should have a bunch of different types of posture for different tasks. Is that
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
what you're getting at?
Yeah, I can say, because the like I've said this before, the cue chest out. I grew up with it. Everybody grew up with it, and I think it can be a good thing. But I also think that 99% of people will be using it in a bad way, because
Right.
they just are not aware of what's going on down below in their lumbar spine when they're doing this chest out type of thing. If they had awareness, again, if they had awareness of their pelvic position, lumbar spine, and of course thoracic spine, and they did the proper chest out, that would, to me, that would mean that they're getting chest expansion without their lower back starting to arch like crazy. Because if you
Right.
just stick your chest out, that's a lot different from having control of your pelvis and just taking a good breath in and expanding through your chest and other
Right.
areas too. So yeah, definitely different positions. I want you to own every position, and I think there always is. I do believe a way of achieving a certain goal. I think there's numerous ways to get there, but I think there's usually a better way depending on the person's specific needs and goals. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. So it's just, you're more looking, and I guess this kind of goes into like, hey, like what are your specialties and like your approach to posture. But you've mentioned, all right, instead of like we're building this one stiff broad posture that we think of, sit up tall, sit pretty kind of deal, you're training the person to be able to do a bunch of different things. Because I think of like a caveman, like, for them to be able to survive, what do? They ran, they jumped, they crawled, they did it, they got into different, as you said, like positions nonstop. And that's what made them survive, I guess, really. And kind of when I think about posture too, like sitting up tall and pretty didn't really become a problem until the last, 50, 100 years, when we, honestly, like started sitting more and started being more stationary and not out and about and, farming and stuff like that. I think it's,
Yeah, stop moving, maybe stop moving as much, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's yeah, even like the cavemans, and they had to endure certain types of temperatures. Sure, maybe they didn't have the clothing that we did, so their bodies had to acclimate to things like that. That's where certain types of rib cages come into play. Someone who might be wider or more narrow, but more wider, might be able to retain heat better. So it might be someone who lived in the colder climates, and quite the opposite for someone else. But yeah, that's another story. It's pretty interesting to see, because that you have those people back 100 years ago. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. We just don't necessarily know. But I think now we live in an era where we're always looking down at our cell phones. We're always sitting down. We're stationary. We love easy. So technology is only getting better, and that's a massive influence. It's got to be one of the biggest influences, period. As in, we're trying to get easier because we want to be efficient with our day. Instead of taking 8 hours to wash your clothes in a day, we got washers and dryers now, that are quick and easy and things like that. And that always comes with a price. It comes up with giving up some type of security for us, or in essence for our practice, it's maybe we don't move as much. And then we adapt in that way. And then, we get used to it. But then the second we need to actually start moving, or maybe go exercise or play your sport, there's these injuries that come about, and
get into
people aren't
those
ready.
other
Yeah.
postures, getting those other positions. That's when the
Mm-hmm.
issues come into play.
Yep.
Gotcha. Making sense,
Mm-hmm.
man. So you've talked about different positions, different types of postures, kind of like a variability, if you would. And then you've also talked about respiration. You mind, like, kind of like, I'm guessing that's a pretty key factor in your approach to posture training. Can you dive in a little bit more on tell me why breathing even matters? Like,
we got like
I
4
mean,
hours.
right.
Yeah.
Like, it keeps me alive. I know that.
It does.
Oxygen, all that good
And
stuff.
I think it just comes back to our bodies want to breathe 20, how many times a day? 25,000 times a day. And it's going to be subconscious. But again, our bodies and brains want to do it effectively as the easiest way possible. So I guess effectiveness gets cut out if you don't own position of your joints, if you don't know what that means. Because I'll have people all the time, they'll come up to me like, Jake, do you want me to think about my breathing all day? Do you want me to like hold on to these left abs here, like when I'm walking? Because I'm doing that already. I'm like, no, I don't want you to do that. Like if you learn how to own the position of your joints, you're already going to be breathing better, or you should be. And if you're not, then we're missing something.
Is that something you're telling people, like owning this position, you're telling them like to nonstop, like thinking about this, and that will create a change? Or is this something that should be unconscious?
I'm definitely not having them think about it, because that's too much thought. It's way too much thought process. It's like telling someone to squeeze their glutes when they're walking. It's just not going to happen, nor would I
Right.
want that. If your ilium, so your pelvis, is in a good position to fire, it's in a good position, as in it's not too far in an anterior tilt or too far in a posterior tilt. It's
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. It's in that healthy posture, meaning it's ready to move in any direction when it's called upon. So those muscles can fire, and
Right.
just on call when the heel strikes the floor, things like that. So no, I don't want them thinking about it. But when I do want them thinking about certain things is when they're doing exercises with me or at home. I want them thinking about certain points of reference when they're doing an exercise, whether
Mm-hmm.
it be could be the left abs at a certain point. It could be their right inside arch. It could be their heel. It could be their left shoulder. It could be anything. But there's little things that I want to give, and I want to give the minimal dosage for them to
Right.
understand how to do it. Because if I put them in a really good position off the bat, they're already going to have a great opportunity to succeed at the exercise, instead of them suffering in a position that they're kind of not in a great spot. They have to maneuver their body to possibly feel that hamstring or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? It's my job to put them in a good spot right away, so I minimize the ability to fail at the
Gotcha.
exercise. So yeah, that's my goal, because breathing it's just another way of affecting the nervous system. That's all we're trying to
Gotcha.
do. We're trying to manipulate the nervous system to either calm down or spike up. And most people are just very spiked up, so they have a sympathetic drive constantly. But then their body gets used to that, and maybe that becomes normal to them, even though maybe statistically it's not supposed to be as normal. It depends on
Mm-hmm.
their environment, many things. I just lived in New York City, so I got used to a high intense environment where I'm hearing car alarms every 2 seconds. In the
Right.
first month and a half, I didn't sleep, and after that I got used to it, but the noise didn't change. My body just
Yeah.
adapted to it, right? So but is it healthy? I don't really think so, but I think it could be a great way to expose myself to stress, because
Mm-hmm.
now maybe I can go back sometime and not notice it as much, or I've adapted to it. Maybe I've become resilient out of it.
Right.
So things like that.
I like that. So, and it seems really like there's more to this posture training than just the typical, let's do some glute bridges, squeeze your shoulder blades a couple of times, sit up tall, like a little posture tool reminder on your back, like
Oh yeah,
things like that.
yeah.
So, and
I
that's
saw
something
that.
too, like, I've looked at, and at least with my clients too, like I try to tell them like, hey, there's way more like unfortunately, it's not black and white, it's murky gray,
Yep.
very murky gray. And there's so much more going on with your body if you truly want to change something about it. And you have to try and control all these variables. And
Hmm.
that's there's way more to it than just pulling your shoulders back.
Yeah, I'll first say I don't condone any of those shoulder straps that pull your shoulders back or that
Yeah.
zapper on your back. I just think that there's better ways. If anything, I would be taking a band and pulling your shoulders so far forward. If anything, if I'm trying to
Yeah.
get my shoulders to pull back, so we get muscles to do the job instead of something passively pulling back your shoulder
Right. And
blades.
that's
Because
getting that nervous system kind of involved. I see.
yeah, we'll
And
be
that's gonna,
spiking those vertebrae back, and then we'll
yeah.
be sending our thoracic spine towards extension, which is what this is. Even though
Hmm.
we're trying to pull our shoulder blades back, we're really just trying not to fall forward. That's
Yeah.
what we're just trying to stop ourselves from falling. So our body does this snake type maneuver to keep us upright. But
Hmm.
that's the bad posture. If anything, it's just the bad strategy of understanding how to keep your center of mass. All right, we're just trying not to fall. That's what we are as humans. We're trying to hold these internal pressures so we don't fall left or right.
Yeah.
And then what our body will manipulate itself in any way to keep you from falling. And that's
Yeah.
what's going on. And sometimes it's the bad way because it's the easy way again for the brain.
Yeah. I think
Right.
everyone's seen the older gentleman walking around all hunched over at Kroger's or whatever, QFC. I don't know what they got down in Dallas.
It's Kroger's actually.
They
It's
got some
Kroger's. I
Kroger's.
was
Oh
there for the
man.
first time. I'm like, oh man, what is this?
Yeah, good old K Rogers, man. But yeah, like that fella, like he's got that super intense thoracic kyphosis, that horrible term we hear.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just a strategy for him to stay upright. It sounds like defy
Yep.
gravity.
Yep.
Man,
He's probably not in that position either, right? He's probably
right,
not in that rounded posture that he looks like he is, even though it looks like it, but looks can be very deceiving. And that's
right,
why those shoulder blades that you mentioned already, they are the reason that that's kind of being presented in that way, because he's
right,
so far back. But what you don't see under the skin is that thoracic spine is almost in essence, if I were to stand him up, shift him backwards towards his heels instead of his balls of his feet where he's currently at, um, he would really expose this chest out.
right,
He would really look like that because he's going to fall backwards if he it doesn't do that now. So
right.
that's what's happening. So again, it's that give and take. But if you shift someone back in a good position, whether it's a testing position or just them in standing, to me, I use that as a test.
Mm-hmm.
It will expose a lot of things because most of them that look like they're kyphotic are really not kyphotic. They just don't know how to manage their center of mass very well.
Right. So you're saying that a lot of these bad postures and what everyone's fighting against is really just your nervous system's relationship to gravity.
Yeah, that's it. That's
And then
exactly what I'm saying.
yeah, and just how it's maintaining and staying upright kind of deal. So,
Yep.
and then in order to change that how the nervous system is associating itself, you're using respiration to kind of tap into it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of
And
the biggest ways, right?
yeah,
You can manipulate so many things when it comes to that. I always tell everybody, like, for the most part, most people, their relationship with gravity, it's like their enemy, but I'm trying to make it their best friend.
yeah,
And that's what I like to do. And once you understand that, I've had a couple breakthroughs recently with certain people that just had no clue. They can't sense certain things. And it's, again, self-awareness and trying to bring it to them because they don't need me after they learn certain things, but it takes a lot of effort to understand certain concepts. But once you get it, you're like,
true,
whoa, that's game changer. Thank you so much for this. Because now I know what I'm doing wrong. I can get out of it at any time that I want instead of
right,
being stuck somewhere and getting used to it and thinking that, this is it.
right, yeah, man. Oh, and you're talking about getting stuck in places. I think that's something that we should cover too, like being
Sure.
stuck in a certain position. You're trying to get people, to be able to get in and out, kind of imagine like a spider monkey being able to climb all over the branches and stuff. But if he was stuck upright, and could only
Yep.
move his arm one way, like how's he going to be successful in
Yep.
doing that? So what are these positions, like, I mean, obviously this isn't your typical posture advice that you'll find online. So what are these like positions? Like, could you give me like 3 positions or exercises that would be beneficial? And we can link these in the show too. But like
Sure.
your top 3 or like go-to beginner ones.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I very often find that because we are inside. So for anyone that doesn't know, the insides of our bodies, the internal structures are not the same from the left versus the right. They are not even close to the same. We're going to be heavily right side biased. So we have a diaphragm on the right side that's 2 to 3 times bigger than the left. Even though they're the same, there's a hemi diaphragm on each side, and it's much larger on the right side. And because of this, we love to orient ourselves towards the right side. And when you breathe air pressure, so you take a breath in, if you put your hands on your ribs, you take a breath in, you feel ribs moving, right? So your ribs will move. Some move more than others, right? That's the path of least resistance again. So if you're turned a certain way, if my body's oriented in a certain direction and I breathe air, right? Some parts of my rib cage are going to be more compressed and start to tighten up. Versus others might expand a little bit more because it's just easier for air to flow over there. And the more I breathe 25,000 times a day, I'm constantly stretching something or compressing something, right? And that builds a pattern because my brain wants to just keep doing the same easy thing. And it's like, oh, I just want to do it because, I got to go to work. So it's going to keep breathing in the same way. And those ribs will get moved. Those ribs will drive the spine. This is, in my opinion, where most scoliotic cases come from in general, even though we all deal with some type of curvature in our spine. All of us do. It just depends how far along we let it go, right? Without managing the internal pressures inside of us. But because of this, again, you keep breathing, right? These ribs keep moving. Something keeps expanding. Something keeps compressing, right? And we get put in a state of extension a lot of times. So a big anterior tilt can occur a lot of the times. And of course, there's other things that can occur in the pelvis, many things. It's a very complex joint. It's an amazing joint.
Right.
But to see that change, right, is just incredible. And then you get biased in that position, you get used to that position, and then all of a sudden your range of motion becomes limited in certain movements, right? So shoulder flexion could be limited more, say on the left side versus the right side versus internal and external rotation. But a lot of it is just an inability to properly expand. So I'll just give you one quick one now. If people are missing, say, internal rotation in their shoulder, if they just learned how to properly expand their chest walls, they would probably gain a lot of that range of motion back big time, because a lot of times their six pack here is just pulling down on that sternum so often, and then that limits their ability to properly internally rotate. But again, just like you said, their body wants to complete the movement. So it's going to start calling on protraction, potentially to get more internal rotation, possibly some neck muscles. They're going to get pulled on, and that's going to lead to pain. And we don't want that, right?
Well,
so I would say,
I think about when I've been like benching in the past and everything like that, which is heavily internal rotation. You need that, but it would just, right through here every single time. And whenever I would, have people test me, my internal rotation on this side was like I had nothing. And for those that are, internal rotation is just how far can this arm go downward, essentially, and with control. And it's a test that we use is in rehab and in personal training, to just really tell us what's going on at that joint. And there's, all kinds of different ranges that you can have. But yeah, I think being able to, and man, like a lot of people, they hear respiration and breathing and they're thinking belly breathing, but we forget that there's all this space in between each rib that we have that allows that thing to open up and compress and move around. And if that thing's rigid, like you said, path of least resistance, it's going to go right into your belly, which is, mushy half the time. And it's not, why wouldn't the pressure go that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. If you, very basic example for anybody, if you just want to sit in a chair or stand up, if you just take a normal breath in, if you are a belly breather, or even if you aren't, right? It's all relative to me. If you just anterior tilt your pelvis, so if you just arch your back big time, you take a breath in, I guarantee that you feel air going to your belly a lot more than anywhere else at that point. Versus if you were to tuck your butt under you and posterior tilt and you just take the same breath in, I'm willing to bet air does not go nearly as much to your belly as it did when you were in a massive anterior tilt. So things like that. So just understand that it's a huge concept, because it's just highly misunderstood, and people just don't care enough about the insides of your body when it comes to this, because it's not aesthetically pleasing. And and that's a big thing. And even with internal rotation for your bench press, that's a huge thing. And you wonder why benchers or powerlifters, they rip their pecs all the time. why do they rip their pecs so often from a bench press when they're not even really using their pecs effectively in a bench press? They're retracting their shoulder blades, their chest is coming out, right? They're pulling back, they're internally rotated so they can gain a lot of power, right? They're going to be using their lats like crazy. It's great for leverage, and from a physics standpoint, they're going to pull more weight because they're using more muscles. But if you're trying to isolate pecs, there's no way you should do a pec muscle activity like that. And they're eccentrically loaded. So for anyone who doesn't know, eccentric orientation of a muscle is basically when starting point A and B, it's when they're starting farther apart, so they're stretched, right? So that's why people rip their pecs quite often when they're doing bench press. Of course,
it's already stretched.
They're already stretched, and then they're trying
And
to
then
call upon it really quick,
pops
and
off.
that's where you get hamstring pulls too with a lot of people. More hamstring pulls than ever. It's because their pelvis is in a massive anterior tilt. So it's stretched already. And then their body says, hey, I got to take a step right now. I'm going to ask you to jump off this plyo box really quick. Rip.
Gone.
That's it. Like an elastic band, right? So that's why a lot of people rip their pecs all the time. It's definitely a surgery you don't want to have, but it happens often.
Gotcha. I got a patient that just came in and he did that exact thing. 225, just boom, dropped on his chest. Spotter couldn't get it off him. Bad day. He needs that internal rotation, man. He needs that internal.
Yeah, that's it. So we want to jump into exercises, I think.
Yeah. So you're talking about, like, I think that pelvis shifting is a cool one. Just, I was doing that. As soon as I tucked my butt, I felt like kind of expansion in my back a little bit more versus like going, my abs are on kind of deal. But yeah, go into it, man. I'm curious about these positions. It sounds like you're using the positions and then you just use some breathing with it.
Yeah, I of course I'm that person that always likes to integrate a lot of things together. Of course, but I do have my foundations. I could branch off into certain vestibular work or visual training and things like that. However, if you don't have respiration down, I don't think you have many things down, because your respiration will drive your movement, your ability to move. Of course, we can move without respiration, but are we doing it effectively? And then we were looking at wear and tear. It's like a car. You slam on your brakes constantly. You think you're going to have a brake issue sooner? Yeah. Right. So these things we got to understand. But the hard part is knowing, like, what is an efficient movement? How are these joints supposed to move? And that's our job. That's my job. That's what I love to do, is to help people move better. So I would say the first thing in general that people need to learn how to do is effectively posteriorly tilt their pelvis properly and find their heels. I recently posted on my Instagram how to properly stand in posterior tilt to find your center of mass in a posterior orientation. So shift backwards, because very often we are shifted anterior, always falling forward, because we are humans that walk forwards, not backwards. We wouldn't have this issue if we walked backwards, but we just don't. So that's my first one. I would say learn how to posterior tilt effectively, without too much lumbar flexion, of course, because we should be able to hold a good position. But most people actually don't have the ability to. And that's where I come in to show them in easy positions, maybe on their back. Maybe on their back is the easiest position to start, or their side. Or if I can get them to standing right away, I'm doing it, because I want them in and out of that position quickly, because we walk, that means we're standing. So these positions on the ground are incredibly powerful to sense certain things without other muscles trying to cheat the system for you. But eventually we have to teach it in standing. If we don't, it'll never stick. So neuroplasticity, it will never truly stick.
Gotcha. Ooh, that neuroplasticity. I
There
like it. Yeah, because you have to have it. That's what's truly going to make that change and make everything stick and retrain the system, this very complex system.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. No, absolutely. And I think another one, if I had to pick a second one, if we're going in standing, right? Just for anyone out there, it's single leg stance. How well do they own single leg stance? And what does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? You stand on one leg, okay, can you stand on one leg? But what I mean is I want to be able to own single leg stance, the left and the right, of course, in varying degrees of hip turns. So I want to be able to shift in my left hip and then maintain a certain position on that hip. So the hips looking left, and stand on that left leg without my hips trying to turn back to the right. Because if I don't know how to hold on to my inner thigh on that left side when my hips are left, and I just let go of it, or I can't sense it, I guarantee my hips want to orient back to the right, and vice versa. In a right stance, can I hold my hips right and then stand on that right leg without my hips turning to the left? So I need to sense that inner thigh. And it's just very common that I see it's easier to do it on the right side. But there's other muscles that can make things easier or more difficult. So it's never a single answer. It's never like, oh, you're right side dominant. No, there's so many things that could happen. But I teach people how to, I use it as a comparison. I say, hey, let's do this position, stand on your left leg, turn your hips left. All right, great. Reach with your right arm forward. So everything's turning over to the left side, meaning you should be able to stand in that position pretty easy, right? And then you stand there, and then maybe can you try to orient your upper body back to the right while your hips are still staying left. So we got this thing called contralateral rotation going on. So the hips are looking left while the upper body is now turning right. And I would use my stormtrooper. I just don't have him with me, and I'm so sorry for that.
Man.
I got this doll that can turn in many different fashions up here.
Oh,
yeah, it's a great representation of what the body can do, right? With the shoulders turning right, the head turning left, things like that, because it's very cool to see. So I apologize for that, but that's my second exercise, I would say, just to master single leg stance in many different angles.
Yeah. Okay. I got you, man. What about that third one? So, you're saying left and right side, you got to get those both working. You got to be able to shift your hips back or posterior tilt. I think people are pretty familiar with that one. And at least doing posterior tilt exercises.
Yeah. But get their pelvis in a better position, if that makes sense. Because what I'm trying to do, my overall goal is I'm trying to achieve a multi-directional expansion of your rib cage. I want air to breathe in such a way that if I were to take an air compressor and put it right inside of you and just shoot it from all angles, so left, right, up, down, out, I want air to go everywhere the same. I want it to get pushed from the inside out like a ball from the center of mass. Again, comes back to that center.
Well, I mean, the lungs are right here, like they're
so they're supposed to expand, right? It should happen. But that's, again, right, that's that joint position. So I can put someone in a position where I can direct airflow, and that's why respiration is so powerful. You can couple it with your joint position, because now if I want air to go somewhere in particular, say their upper back, I know that I'm going to want to be reaching in a protracted state. I'm going to want to have my pelvis in a slight tuck, because if I have it in that anterior tilt, that arching of your back, it's going to go right to your belly again. And that's that one exercise we went over before. So that's why it's so important for me to understand position, because your position will dictate where your airflow is going to go. And if you constantly breathe and allow airflow to go in a certain spot every single day, and I'm talking every day, about millions of times over the weeks, it leads to issues. It leads to strategies that your body's going to I would say couple with pain eventually, because you're now using muscles in an improper manner where maybe they weren't supposed to do that. They're going to take wear and tear.
Yeah, that's where you get those imbalances and
imbalance. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think a lot of people are dealing with that kind of stuff.
Yep. So I think I had one more for you, right?
Let's hear it. Yeah, man.
Okay. So that's a tough one, because it's so hard for me to even say, hey, everybody should do these three, because I don't believe that. Right? And I know you agree with me, but I would say, since I hit the bottom position now, if we can own that, I would say let's do some type of split stance activity that would also couple a push-pull type of movement. Maybe having two cable machines or a band in front and band behind, where I'm pushing a chest press and I'm doing a row on the opposite. And I would definitely start in a split stance. Say my left foot is forward and my right leg's back. I'm probably going to bench press with my right arm forward to cross connect with that left leg that's in front. And I might do an isometric hold just to sense, because I want to first know that air is going where I want it to go. So if I don't want to get too far into it, but if I say I'm reaching forward my right arm without any excessive rotation, I think air might want to go to that right upper back. And then I also want air to go to that left chest. So air works almost in a cross pattern very, very often. And I want it to be able to do that when you're in a certain position, because if you can't sense air going in a certain position, then you might start to use other strategies to get the movement done. And maybe it's not as effective, but hey, maybe it is. But I just often find that it's just not, unless you have a awareness of your position and that. So I would do push pulls. I love those, because you're integrating the whole body. That's a whole body workout.
Crossing into a lot more. I mean, that's bridging this posture training, which is always like static. You have to stay in this one position to true function, I'm able to run, I'm able to walk, and which is where, again, you're talking about these different postures or positions that you have to get into. And I think that's completely, I mean, it sounds left field, compared to a lot of the posture training that's out there, which is just the typical sit up and retract your shoulder blades. Like instead, you're adding this, you're talking about influence the nervous system, do it through kind of like this breathing to expand your rib cage. I kind of picture it as like a, have you ever seen people like make the steel drums? And they just like, they hammer it all. Like that's what you're doing, man. You're just chiseling away, popping open rib cages. And then with that, now here's my question. If you're doing all this and you're getting people to move better, do you think you're getting them to, what's the ultimate goal of good posture? Sit up pretty, right? Do you think you can make people sit up pretty?
I guess that's a really tough question. My ultimate goal would be to bring them happiness in any way, because if they have better posture, who knows, maybe they might be happier, right? It's for the reason that we all do what we love to do with our jobs, or what we're all chasing a mental state of happiness. That's what we want ultimately. We want money because maybe it'll make us happy, right? Things like that. So posture, maybe good posture will bring me happiness. Maybe it won't. I guess you'll find out when you get there. But
good posture gets you the girls.
Puff
out that chest, man.
That's it. Puff out that chest. Probably won't do you too much. I know this sounds out of left field, but we're in agreement that I really believe that sticking your chest out, chest up, things like this, they could very well be making you worse. And I'd be happy to show anybody that doesn't fully understand. You can contact me anytime. I would love to explain it, because I try to do it everybody that I speak to. We need to expand our rib cage in every direction, depending on the position that we're in. Otherwise, certain ribs get tight again. And if you don't have that movement, like you said in the beginning, these ribs, they don't do this and this, right? That's like telling your organs they can't pump properly. Now you don't have better blood flow. All these things we need to constantly be moving. But if we don't have the ability to, because our certain ribs are stuck, like scoliotic cases, you'll see ribs are normally like this together. Now some scoliotic cases are like this. I mean, that's a lot of people, not even necessarily scoliotic people. It's just, if you don't breathe properly, this is going to happen. This is what's going to happen. Or in some places, it's going to be like this. And now you don't have balance. And that's so important. It's incredible to see now that I understand it.
Right. And I think a way to bridge this left field too is what you just said a couple lines ago. You said we need to be constantly moving. And I think that's where, everyone knows, like, we don't move enough as, human beings today in our society. And what you're promoting is moving better versus just improving a static position. Instead, you're really driving and trying to make a change in someone's overall health and well-being and being able to do what they want to do. You're not just training them for sitting up and being a robot or something,
No,
because that's not what we are. We're, even though our brain has, developed to this process and, we're able to be successful in our society environments today, the body struggling to keep up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that associates pain, and and then that's another thing. It's so misunderstood. I can't associate a great posture like this with no pain. That's just not possible. Because you'll see people, big bodybuilders, that are in massive amounts of pain, but they sit up tall, right? Or you got someone that's slouched over who doesn't have pain. It's like, how do you objectively test that? Well, I think again it comes back to this balance, that we need to understand movement. We need to own positions, and then possibly our posture does look a little bit better, right? But we feel better. We can move. I want to be a ninja, me personally. I literally want to be the guy that can just do anything. I don't want to be stuck. Yeah, there's two spectrums, right? There's a super compressed guy and someone who's just super expanded, right, in my eyes, right? And I like this right in the middle, and I'm happy to be there. I'm never going to be the best at bench pressing. I'm never going to be the best power lifter. I'm on the flip side, I'm never going to be the best marathon runner.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I want to be right here in the middle, because for me, my objective is to live as pain-free as possible, happy life, and be just good all around.
Yeah. Dang. I think that's a good goal to have. I'm right there with you, man. Like, I am not the strongest guy in the gym, and I am also, I never was the most endurance. I'm pretty quick, but
yeah.
That's I think I like the idea of just being a ninja, just being able to do whatever you need to do, get it done.
Yep.
hey, if zombies come, that's who's gonna win right there.
That's it. Yeah. And what is strength? That's
Yeah.
a broad term too.
Oh
That doesn't,
God, that's
I could
a
throw a baseball 100 miles an hour, but I don't
yeah,
bench press 400 pounds, So
true.
what is strength, So
Oh,
take your pick.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother podcast. Definitely, man.
Awesome.
Uh, cool, man. Well, dude, thank you for sharing like your insights and like kind of what is posture to you, and like what you do as a professional in the industry. Um, I have three more questions. I know you're a busy guy. You got some other interviews after this, but I got three quick questions. Just I kind of like to ask people that come on the show, and you just give me your best answer, man. But they're gonna be off the cuff, ready to go. So, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, man. So, what's the worst advice you've ever heard in both fitness or physical therapy rehab settings?
Oh man, that's great. Now that I think back on my days, it's going to be just because of the 99%, like I mentioned, it's going to be that
Mhm.
chest out when you're squatting,
Yeah.
because it's what single-handedly gave me a herniated disc. Uh, I can't narrow it down, but I know I had a massive issue, and it just happened to be from one day of squatting in college baseball when I played from a coach that was saying, "Chest out, more, more," and
Yep.
yeah, and let's just say that it didn't turn out well for me. And ego got in the way, and I was trying to lift a lot of weight, and when your back kicks in too much, it's going to be a bad day for you when you don't know how to use your legs and
Yeah.
maintain a good position of that rib cage to the pelvis. You got to anchor it down, and I just didn't do that because chest out loses that anchor.
Right. Gotcha, man. Yeah, that's a big one to see in the gym, and that's still promoted a lot.
Hmm.
There's more than one way to squat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
There's
want to do a million ways, right?
yeah, exactly. There
Mm.
you go, man. That's that variability. I
Yeah.
see. All right, man. Cool. Yeah, I like that's some bad advice.
It's a bad,
I
it could be
gotcha.
good if it's used properly, but it's
True.
just not.
That's some
Yeah.
bad advice. No, it's not best. It's not the best for everyone. Um, all right, man. Who is someone that you look up to the most? Like, doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be fitness related, but just someone that like is a mentor or role model for you.
Hmm. I guess I can throw this back. Bunch of coaches. Of course, my parents are big role models for me,
Hmm.
for everything, for giving me confidence in life. And if I didn't have that growing up, I don't know where I'd be. So happy for them in my life, and just telling me I can do all. When I was down, and not being able to study as well. I wasn't the best in school growing up. I can tell you that. And
I
just
get
getting
that.
through that. It's now that I look back on it, I'm like, if I didn't have that good support system, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah.
So I give all the blessings to my parents for sure.
Nice, man. Yeah. That it's crazy how much, and that's a whole nother podcast too, how much parents and your environment as a kid really does affect
Hmm.
you and who you are. And like I think about, I'm in my late 20s, and all the stuff like I still carry with me from just like what my parents have taught me, because I'm kind of in the same boat. Like I had great parents. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, man. Cool.
I'm blessed.
Definitely. Definitely. All right, man. Last one. What is your favorite resource for health, fitness, physical therapy, posture? Like I'm asking you, what would you point me to?
Or would I point you to?
Yeah.
Oh man, too many good things. A lot of good systems out there. If you're looking for just trying to understand respiration from a basic understanding, I would point you towards Posture Restoration Institute, so PRI. Um,
Hmm.
you got other guys in the game really really making a great dent in it. Just they do a great job of explaining it. Um,
Hmm.
I also study from, say, Bill Hartman. Luckily, I'm going to a seminar that he runs here soon, which is going to be incredible.
Yeah, man.
But there's
Congrats on
books.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. There's books. You can study all things, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of information out there that is misleading. And it's only because I've constantly questioned my own ways throughout my life. I'm like, how can I do this better? What can I do? I know there's got to be a better way. You
Right.
can't stop here. I can't think I'm the best right now. I know I can't. So I have to get better. So I always question myself. I'm the positive skeptic. I want to look at it as a good way, but
Yeah.
I'm the positive skeptic that's always like questioning myself. I'm like, why am I doing this? Am I being biased, or am I really helping this person? And how can I
Right.
help them better? So if you're reading books, whatever it is, just filter what is good out of it. Take what you can and keep moving. But there's so many good things to study out there. Honestly, there's so many things I could list. You
Right.
could say Anatomy Trains is another great book that I love to read for integration, because if you can affect the way that you breathe, you can stretch your fascia. You can manipulate it in certain ways.
Right.
We're talking different lenses now, and if you understand it all, you can put it together, and then you're like, whoa. So I'm breathing, but now I'm stretching my fascia, and now I'm not so tight anymore, or compressed, or anything
Yeah.
like that. Just these integration things, it's great to study. So don't be biased, and go study a lot of different things. But I would say, to get a good grasp on whatever it is that you are studying, don't just jump around. Get a really solid grasp, however long that takes, 6 months to a year, could be more. And then go study something else. But I made that mistake of studying too many things at once, and I never dove enough deep. But then I stopped that, and I really dove deep, and it was a game changing for me.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I did the same crap.
Yeah, we
It's
all
just
did.
like, I'm going to study it all. And that does
Yep.
not work ever. You got to
No.
focus here
Yep.
and
Yep.
there. Dang,
We're
man.
young.
All right. Yeah. So Bill Hartman Postural Restoration Institute, some
Anatomy
anatomy
Trains.
trains, some
Oh,
great
yeah.
resources. I use those as well in my practice, and I think they're awesome. And something too, I want to add on just my little blip. I think your experience has probably been huge for you. Like you having that herniated disc made you think about your posture and everything that you do differently. And you are able to look at it from a different view than maybe a lot of people out there, professionals in the industry. So you've had a reason to truly question what you do and why you do it, because it negatively affected you and your health.
Yeah.
And I think
Thank you.
I think that's huge, man. Like having that true, you've been in the trenches. Like,
No, I agree. I would actually say, I didn't want to say that in general, but if I was just giving general information, but if I'm talking about myself, that is the number one source. I am my own study. I have done this for so long. I love to say that I work with people every day, and I get to do different things, of course, all in the efforts of helping them, not to just me learning, but me helping them is me learning.
Right.
Trial and error is the most influential thing I could ever come across. I've failed in many ways, but I learn from every time, every single time. And it's awesome, because the more experience you have, and I know we're both young, we're both the late 20s, but at the same time, we've been doing this a long time, but not long enough.
Right.
Because we'll look back in 20 years and we'll probably be like, wow, I can't believe I said I thought I knew a lot, even though I do think I know a lot, but I think there's always I do. I think I've, just because I put so much effort, and I'm such a nerd, and just like you are probably, right. We just love this stuff, and it's what drives me. It's what makes me happy. Again, bringing happiness to myself is bringing it to someone else, and so that's why I study. I stay up to like 2 a.m. sometimes just studying, and just wake up early, and I just love it, because I want to know. And those past injuries, like you said, and those weren't my first. I've had many surgeries, and they've all led to me questioning, like, why am I hurt? Why am I getting hurt? And why can't I prevent that?
100%, man. I'm right there with you. Dude, nice. That's awesome. I think that's a great way to kind of sum it up there. Dude, Jake, this has been an awesome interview. I did an interview with Levi Kirkpatrick, and you're literally the epitome of the trainer to look for. It was like the top 10 things to look for in a trainer. And like, this guy right here is like who you should be looking for. He's
Dude, I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, man. He's doing all the right stuff. Where can we find you, man? Like, tell me kind of like your services, all that stuff. What do you got going? What's in the works?
Sure. So I am the Rehab Process on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and LinkedIn is Jake Dunn. So add me on all that. I'm pretty big on Instagram. Of course, I interact with everybody anywhere else, but I have transitioned to moving to Texas now. So be on the lookout for a website coming here very, very soon that I've been making. So that's going to have a lot of things on it that will not be on Instagram or anything. You'll see a lot of new content just on there. My services that I'll be providing, and how I can help anyone and just bring value to people. So yeah, the Rehab Process on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and then the Rehab Process at gmail.com is my email.
Gotcha, man. Cool. Well, hey, that's Jake. This is Portal PT Talks, and just in summary, there's more to your posture than just sitting up tall. It's that gray area, that's where we all live. You got to be able to shift from side to side, expand your rib cage, create neuroplasticity, which is huge. It's key. Some of the worst advice I've ever heard now is puffing out your chest. Maybe, only sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then all those exercises you kind of talked about, we're going to link those in the description here. So that way, all the viewers can get those and try them out and see if they work for you. And, I definitely will look forward to talking to you in the future, the near future, man. I want to have you on soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kyle. You're an incredible guy. I really appreciate you having me on here, man. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Well, that's it. And yeah, man, I'll see you next time.